All right. Hello, everyone, and thank you for being a part of the 2021 Virtual Christmas Summit, sponsored by Boscoyo Studio. All the presentations of this room are specifically sponsored by Build a Light Show, and our next presentation is Light-O-Rama Superstar, Auto Sequencer for Traditional Lights by Brian Bruderer, one of the Superstar developers for Light-O-Rama. During this presentation, please do not unmute yourself or start your video. You're welcome to use the chat to ask some relevant questions about the presentation, since other attendees or the hosts might be able to answer your question. But please save those questions directed at Brian for the end of the session during the Q&A. At that point, you can unmute yourselves or ask the questions in the chat. Thanks for attending, and I'll turn it over to Brian.
Okay, can you hear me?
You can, you're live.
Okay, and let's get over to this. Most of my presentation is not the slides, but let's see, how do we go to slideshow? Don't you just, yeah. So yeah, this is the first slide showing that we are sponsored by Boscoyo. And the title is Auto Sequence for Traditional Lights, but I'm going to cover some other stuff too on just sequencing your other lights using other methods as well. And for what it's worth, I am not one of the developers on Superstar. I am the developer on Superstar. There's no one else at Light-O-Rama that does the Superstar code. The first thing, of course, is creating a preview, and then you want to create a good grid from the using the preview, and then with the auto sequence feature, for traditional lights, what you're going to want to do is use one or more pixels in a scene auto sequence effect, and auto sequence will just sort of scoot the pixel along the grid, and it scoots it faster at the more active parts of the song, and it's much less blinky than instant sequence. But you can try both. In some cases, you might like what instant sequence does better. But I'm also going to show how you can, I came up with a new term called morphosizing, that if there's a pixel tree sequence that exists for the song that you're doing, you can buy that sequence and then resize it to match the grid for your traditional lights, and it ends up looking pretty good. And me, I'm like he said, my name's Brian Bruder. I live in Allen, Texas, which is just north of Dallas. I've been doing lights since 2008, and I also enjoy gardening, walks, and writing. And I guess I have something in common with Jim Walls. I have a private pilot's license. I flew a lot in my younger years, but just recently I did get a check rides. It was brought back a lot of memories. It'd been like 30 years since I'd flown, but it all came back to me just fine. And in my younger years, I actually did skydiving and hang gliding. I don't have a big desire to do that now, but when you're young and adventurous, that sounded like a lot of fun. And my favorite superhero is Spider-Man. And here's me with Spider-Man, one of my favorite pictures. I'm going to, let's see. Yeah, let's stop that. And let's go back to, okay, so I assume you can all see my whole screen, right?
We're still seeing PowerPoint.
Oh, well, how does...
You might have to reshare your screen and share the entire screen instead of one window.
Okay. So I go to here. Okay, so yeah, okay. So there we go. So now you're seeing my whole screen. Okay, so now I just have to go back to, I guess, can you only share?
You should be able to share your whole screen.
I don't see that option. Okay, okay. Thank you for the help. You'd think I'd be better at using computers, wouldn't you? So on this first example here, I've got a preview that I got from Spain, a guy in Spain actually. That it's all, at least most of his display is all traditional lights, but he also had two superstar trees. But here, right here, you can see I say entire display minus trees, and let's go into here. And he has some really cool lights here, but they're all traditional lights and they're all white. And but it was interesting that this guy actually ran his own business that he primarily he did stuff for helping to plan out weddings, and so he was very artistic, and I really liked the way he laid out his lights here. But anyway, the grid, it came out this way, that anyway, that's sort of, it just came out like this, and we can use it like that. If you can see, I'll delete this so we'll start from scratch. To do auto sequencing, you can bring up, this is the scene dialog box. And if you just click on the little car, that car stands for auto sequence, and this dialog box comes up. And this orange arrow here points at the direction that it's going to move. I already had a pixel selected there, but if you didn't, you have to select a pixel. And it turns out that auto sequence tends to move things too fast for a lot of songs. And this is Wizards in Winter. And so I have reduced the sensitivity defaults to 5. I've reduced it down to 4. That slows it down a little bit. And if you take away some of the top and bottom frequencies, that will slow it down a little bit. And I've also, the default is to move 1 pixel at a time, and I've reduced that to half a pixel at a time. And so if we just go add, and then, yeah, the default is for the movement is wraparound, but we want it to go move. If we did wraparound, it would just stay on this same row, and we want it to go through all the rows, and we'll just say snake down, and that will make it go through all the active things on the grid and snake downward. And so let's add this effect, and we'll play it here and see what it did. And I'll have to say, Wizards in Sequence is such an active song. It really is sort of a worst case scenario for auto sequence. Since there's always so much going on, it just seemed to be doing something all the time. If you have a song that is less active, then this works better. But and I guess you can do instant sequence as well. Let's see what that ends up doing. We'll just take the default and say sequence all. Yeah, whenever there's a large selection, it's asking if we want to do sequence by selection. We don't. We want to sequence all. So we say sequence all. And that's what instant sequence came up with. Let's see what that does. It's real blinky and it's overly active. And so sort of what I wanted to, like I said, I actually, I should have had them change the title of this class, because in a way what I'm showing is that you can do better than auto sequence and instant sequence if you, let's, we'll select everything. And delete it, and let's start all over again. I'm going to load up the 12 CCR sequence for a superstar tree. And actually, it normally will move the star effects, but the way it looks to see if the star is in there is it looks for a prop that has the word star in it, and there is a prop in here that says star, so it thinks it's the star. So I had to answer no to that, and so it didn't remove the star effects, but it ends up not mattering. These are the star effects, and it placed them right here. But normally, if your preview doesn't have any props that have star in them, then it'll say I have removed all the star effects. So anyway, here we have the sequence, but one problem is that since all the lights in this display are white, it's only going to light them up when there's a white effect. And so what you want to do is, and this will be true for even if you have traditional lights that are all different colors, you probably want, well, it just depends. If you have a lot of traditional lights and they're different colors, then this might play well to them, and you'll see, the different colors all playing at different times. But if you have a small number of lights, it's not going to work well. And if they're all white, well, then what you need to do is change the effects to be white. And so, and you have to do that one effect type at a time. Right now we have, see, whatever the first effect in the group is, that's what it focuses on. And it's only going to change those effects. The first effect is a scene. And so that's the dialog box we're seeing here. And we can say group modify. And we actually want to change the end color as well. And we do that. So now all the scenes have turned white. And then to change all the morphs, we want to find the first morph here, highlight it, and say select all right. And now all, the morph dialog box is here, and we want to change them all to white also. And by the way, I'm considering coming up with a dialog box that is, designed just for this, that will give you options to change. Well, to give you options for the traditional lights to react to different colors, and then you wouldn't have to go through all this. But right now, this is what you have to do. So you say group modify, and now all the morphs are changed to white. So except actually, interestingly, we want to change the, you noticed the tail color, and I think we want to do that one. Well, now I'm getting confused, but it'll work fine. I've tried this. The main part of the effect is white. So the next thing we want to do is select all, and we want to resize this to fit this grid, or else you're only going to see a piece of the sequence get applied to this. And so I've selected all the effects, and we go into the move or scale selected effects dialog box, and we want to scale, and this can get confusing because some displays are considered horizontal and some are considered vertical, and the way to check that is you go into preferences, and it says grid orientation is horizontal. So we have to think of the superstar sequence being laid on its side. So this is the top and this is the bottom of the superstar thing. And so since it is, let's see, move or scale selected effects, since it's horizontal, the width of the superstar sequence is 50, because they're all made for a 50 pixel high tree. But since it's on its side, the width is 50, and the height, I have a 12 CCR sequence in there, so the height is 12, and it defaulted to the width and height of this grid as being 40 by 7. And so it's going to squish or stretch this from 50 by 12 to 40 by 7. And I'm considering in these particular cases, you don't want to do scene thinning. What scene thinning does is whenever you squish something, you can have pixels, you can squish it so pixels are on top of each other. And you got to throw some of them out. And so that's what scene thinning does, is it decides to choose one or the other. But if you don't do scene thinning, then it sort of combines them, and you won't be throwing any stuff out. And so that's what we want in this case. Anyway, just uncheck do scene thinning. And now it squished and stretched that. And to sort of check that you did it right, if we see now when we do these effects, it's doing the left side and then the right side, and they're all falling within the grid here. If you didn't do it right, then on some of these effects, it probably wouldn't show anything up. So anyway, let's play this, and we can see it looks much better because it's based on a sequence that a human did. And so humans can decide where the important parts of the song are and how to sequence to it. So I was pleasantly surprised with how that works out. Now, so we can exit here. And we say save changes. And that's the sequencer playing it to its preview screen. We can stop that. Now, this is, something that the S5 sequencer is really good for. We can, this display also has a superstar tree in it. So if we go into here and select the whole row and say insert superstar effect, and now we're going to just see the tree, and this has an RGB star in it. So I'm going to load up the RGB star sequence for Wizards in Winter. Which is this one. So that, of course, just plays to a superstar tree. And if we exit this, it saves that to the sequencer. And now when we play this, the sequencer will combine them both, so we'll be able to see the tree. Well, it always plays whatever you most recently did. So that's the tree. So what we want to do is stop that and then play again, and we'll see. Uh-oh, I forgot. I ended up making copies of stuff here, and that's what it did. Where I want to erase this. For what it's worth, that's using, that was, maybe I should show that. See, this is using a different preview where I used H-fill, and it ends up, anyway, you get a slightly different look. But for now, so that we can see them side by side, let's go ahead and clear this. Oops, I do select row, clear. Okay, so now when we play it, that's the, and then of course these lights end up blinking very similarly to it. The what in the well, anyway, you saw what the grid looked like. We saw what the grid looked like when we sequenced the other lights before, but this is doing the same thing, except it in the preview it uses H-fill. And to be honest, until this year, I hadn't played with H-fill, and now I can see the reason Matt put that in there. So let's go into Insert Superstar Effect. By just for the, what do they call it? What he calls it, the arrangement for the whole group, I just specified H-fill. And what that does is it makes the grid for each line the same length no matter what. And it duplicates stuff up. Like, see, now if we select that, that is 3 pixels up there. All 3 of these pixels will highlight the same thing. And so if we, well, that's that thing, this star came out to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pixels. And so that makes it, it's going to be more responsive to the whole sequence, because there's an active pixel on the grid everywhere. But we go through the same process of, I guess if I had saved that other thing, I could have just opened that up. But I'll go and open up this Wizards in Winter again, and we do the same thing. We select them, and we want to change the scenes to white. And we want to change all the morphs to white. Yeah, we gotta do the actual change. And yeah, we want to modify the start and end color of the tail. That fixed that issue there. And so now in this particular case, I think it's not going to look that much different. But if we play this, so you can try using H-fill if you don't like the look that happened in the other thing. And we can exit this. And the sequencer will put that on his preview. And you can also do, let's see, where did we go? Yeah, you can use preview. So if all I did is in the final group, I said use preview for the arrangement. And if you do that, you end up with a grid that looks like this, where the actual placement of the lights determines the green squares that it shows up. And this ends up working pretty well also, but because there's so many holes in it, there's some effects that you're going to miss. But I should have saved that other one. Maybe I should go ahead and show that. If I go back to this thing, see, this already has the effects changed to white. I can just say save, and it's going to save it as an SUP file. And then when I go into here, I can just open up that file. Oh, except it that doesn't work because it's not sized to the same grid. So, but I can do it. I'll show it. It saves it, but it's like I said, it's not going to work because it's only going to play to the size of grid that we defined. So let's see. We select everything. We delete it. Let's go through our same process again. I guess if I had saved it after I changed the color but had not changed the dimension yet, that's what I wanted to do. So I'm going to use the 16 CCR version of the sequence. I'll change these to all white, and this makes it so, like I said, it makes it so everything's going to react to this. Both if they were RGB lights, they would react as well. We say group modify. We want to modify the end color as well. And we go to the morphs. And yeah, by the way, what I'm double clicking on this first color, and that's a shortcut, since the most common thing you want to do is it's very common to want to change these first three colors. If you double click on the first one, it changes those first three. Let's see, I do group modify. I want to do the end color as well. So that changes the color of all those. Now we have to resize it. You need to select everything. Yeah, I'm doing mover scale, selected effects, scale, and uncheck that. And like I said, it defaults to the correct destination width and height. Oh, this is where, let me double check that this is a horizontal. Yeah, it's still a horizontal thingy. So we go mover scale. We don't want to do scene thinning. The width is 50 because anyway, the source width is the width of the original sequence, and so it was 50 wide, 50 pixels wide in this case, and 16 tall. So I do this, and so that converted everything. You can see now, you know, that this is the problem with using the use preview layout. Sometimes some of these effects could fall in regions where nothing is highlighted, but it ends up, you know, it gets dimensionally, it gets applied just like the original sequence. So let's play this. One other thing I could show, I haven't tried this for a while, so I hope I do it right. If we, you know, since it's laid on its side, on the tree, wherever it's going up and down, it's going left and right. So if we, yeah, if we go into preferences and change it to vertical, well, now it's considered a vertical thing, and we want to, and unfortunately, this is that case where I should have saved it before I resized it, but so let's go back to here. Change the color to white. Okay, so now since it's considered a vertical display, we still want to select everything, but when we go to mover scale selected effects, we still want to undo scene thinning. The width is now 16 because it's, anyway, the superstar sequences are, you know, in their native, the way they're written, they're considered a vertical sequence. So now it's 16 wide and 50 tall. So we do that. And now all the effects that go up and down on the tree are going to go up and down on this as well. And like at first, you know, I prefer this on this particular display. That works very well. the reasons you may not want to do this is this display has lots of verticalness to it, whereas because this guy, he put these lights on his storefront. And it was like a 2-story store. And whereas most people have light displays, they're basically horizontal, that you got maybe some lights, on some bushes and then your house and your roof, but you really only have like 3 layers of lights. And so there's not much of a vertical component to it. And in those cases, you're not going to want to lay it out vertically like this. You're going to want to use the horizontal thing because most of these sequences, they have more stuff. If it's laid on its side, and it's going to go horizontal better. I'm not sure if I explained that well, but so we've got like 20 minutes left. Are there some questions on what I've done so well? I guess I should wait till the end, but that's all I plan on doing on this particular preview. Do I have some questions on that?
There was one question in the chat about setting up the grid for traditional lights.
Just how you set up the grid?
Yeah, for traditional lights.
Yeah. Now, and for what it's worth, there is a tutorial on that, but just on this one, I hate what I didn't like about this preview is to make things easier, I made copies, but nevertheless, if you just understand that there's copies of stuff in here, that's why there's duplications of things. In general, you want to come up with rows of things in your display. And like, for instance, on this one, he has some lights down here, but they're circles, and he also has circles up here. So I defined a row that has all the circles plus his star. And that just made sense to me. But that's up to you. If we, it's, oops. See, that's considered a what? A wreath. Okay, yeah. So I put all of his wreaths. So if we go into the wreath group, I call it wreath and star. You can see I made a group with all the wreaths in it, and then the star, and then I made it a horizontal stack, because since each one of these are an individual light and they're a group, then you specify an arrangement, and it takes a little bit getting used to, because you're thinking they're laid along in a horizontal line. So at least to me, when I first saw that, I thought, oh, well, if I want to stack them, then I want to stack them vertically. Well, no, they're being stacked along that horizontal line. So you want it to be a horizontal stack, and it doesn't matter if you say align bottoms or align tops. In the case of Superstar, that seldom matters. And you could have chosen horizontal stack V-fill, and then that would make all your things the same size and create duplicates to fill in all the inactive things. But especially if I'm sequencing manually, I always use horizontal stack align bottom or align tops. And so and of course these are arches, but they're arches made from traditional lights, and of course it makes sense to put them in a row. So if you look at the arches group, it's arch 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and they're all in a horizontal stack align bottoms. And if we just look at one of the arches, it looks like it's what, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's an 8 segment arch. And so that, ends up creating a big long row for that. So and then when you're all done, like I made entire display minus trees, you have each one of your groups, here's the wreaths and star, and there's the arches, and I have the windows. Anyway, you have each one of these groups, which was a horizontal row on the display. And so now we make a group that contains nothing but groups, and I called it entire display. And I included everything but the tree, and I chose vertical stack because you're going to stack each one of these horizontal rows on top of each other. And something that's a little bit confusing is he says here, checked items should be ordered bottom to top, which really means they should be in reverse order. The icicles are on the bottom here, and then each thing, and the windows are on the top. So just realize that you end up, and the way you change the order here is you just highlight it, and you can just, oops, oh no, you go and you use this little arrow, and that's how you order things. So are there any more questions on creating a preview?
Yeah, Brian, there's a question from Janet just about what you were doing there. I think you were making a group, correct?
Yeah, well, yeah. And when you go into add and you say create a new group from existing props, and when you do that, it gives you the option to check everything that's in here. And I had just gone through and checked all the, here's the group that's entire display, and you can see it consists of entire display minus tree plus the tree. And so if we go back to, say, this one, anyway, yeah. So what was it? Is there something specifically that I didn't explain here? It just, when this first appears, though, these things will be scattered all over, and you have to go find it and highlight it. And like I said, like if I found it down here, you highlight it, and whoops, it's not going to let me do that. Oh, because that's part of the group. But after, come on. Oh, it's because I have use preview. Okay. In use preview, the order does not matter. But here it does. And so, like, if I wanted to make this a part of that, I could highlight it and put it in any order I want. But realize, see, you wouldn't want to do this because Arch is a part of the Arches group. And so if I included this in here, he would be duplicated. And in general, you don't want to do that, although Jim Walls does do that. But so that's that. I guess we got about 10 minutes. The other thing I was going to show, that have not been saying, you have made, are you sure you want to exit? Yes. I have another preview in here that this is all, I think it's all pixel lights. I just wanted to show how you could do it on that too. Like here, yeah, it says entire house use preview. And this, I just tried to create a generic house, fairly simple, but all of these are pixels. And so when I resized this, I didn't have to change the color of anything because you of course want to retain the color, but I have resized this the way I did the other one. And So, and I've also made it vertical so that it's oriented the same way as a superstar tree. And if we let's see, I guess, okay, let's stop that. I think I have the tree in here as well. So now if we click on this, we'll see the rest of the house and the tree played together. And of course you can see they imitate each other. And admittedly, you wouldn't want to do this with all your sequences, but if you, and I'm not sure if you can hear me over the sequence, but if you had a superstar sequence to whatever you have, but don't have time to sequence the rest of your life, well, heck, do this, and it looks pretty darn good. So that's really mostly what I wanted to cover. I think we're close to the end. Are there some more questions?
Yeah, if you want to pull up your chat, otherwise I can read them. 2 questions.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
From James and Janet.
Let me. Okay, the chat thing. I just where?
Right up next to share screen on the Zoom bar, there's a chat button.
Well, I guess.
Yeah, or Janet or James, if you want to talk, that's fine too.
Yeah. Hey. Hi, Brian.
Hello.
Here's my question that for the grid, are you because I understand the grouping, but then are you making that grouping a motion effects row, then that goes into the grid of Superstar? That's where I'm kind of confused.
Well, I think, well, it's when you create a group, you can see it appears down here. Now, one thing that can be confusing is that sometimes, to be honest, you'd have to ask Matt why this happens sometimes, but sometimes you'll go down to a group or a prop that you just made, and there will be no motion effect row. Like you'll see this row with the cross hatches on it, but when you expand it, there won't be a motion effect row. And the motion effect row, it says motion effects, and they're usually named something like this, where it says effects superstar. Well, but if that didn't exist, then right click on this thing and say add motion effect row. And then after you say add, the first time I tried it, I said add, and then I clicked save, and it made no change, So after you say add motion effect row, and then up here you have to say add. You can have more than one, and you can sequence 2 rows, and he combines them. And so if you wanted 2 motion effect rows, you would do that. I don't know. Does that answer your question?
Well, just a clarification. So you can, and my question is traditional lights, not the RGB. I have that. But I was curious that, so on traditional lights, you can add a motion effects row as you group them together, correct? Is that what you
think? Okay. Here's the one that has traditional lights, and I guess you're right. Let's see. Like these icicle string 1, there's no, see, he defaults to not having a motion effect row, probably because, you wouldn't want a motion effect row for just one light string, but you could add one if you wanted. But in the group, when we go, let's go back up into here. If we go into one of these groups, like the icicles group, since it contains more than one light in it, you add an arrangement. And I think normally, if you have with traditional lights, you're going to have lots of groups, because just one of the lights doesn't make sense, right? You're not going to sequence them individually. And so you make a group, and with groups, you always have an arrangement, and Okay. Up here, he says,
See, that's my question. I didn't see.
you're
any-
right. Sometimes, like right here, it says motion
Yeah.
effect rows 0.
So that's where I'm confused.
And one thing I didn't notice for a long time is he tells you what the size is going to be here. If I say horizontal stack, if I say vertical stack, then it's going to be 1 by 2. If I say horizontal stack, it's 2 by 1. Yeah. Does he okay. If you click on this, it's the same thing as that modify option that I did before. And you can add a motion effect row right here.
The only clarifier I would say there, Brian, is that's for new sequences, as it says in the top bar of that window. This won't apply to existing sequences you have open. So yesterday I shared in my presentation, make sure you do this before you make your sequences. Otherwise you have to do it manually for every sequence in every group.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yep.
I did not know that.
So if you click that right now, click motion effect rows,
uh-huh.
it says for new sequences at the very top.
Oh, it does.
So that's the default for new sequences.
Okay, interesting.
So it's not going to add any more in your existing sequence.
Okay, whereas if we cancel out of this, if we do it from here, is it the same thing? No. So presumably this will do it for...
That will do it for the current sequence only.
It won't. Oh, well, I'm learning. So yeah, the sequencer is not my program. I'm still learning on that. So that explains. I've noticed that. I've done that before, and I thought, where did it go? So if you do it from here, it's only for the current sequence, and if I use this preview again, I won't see it.
That's correct.
Okay. Well, good. Well, thank you. I'm glad you're here. Any other questions? Well,
awful quiet when it comes to questions.
Yeah, I mean, did y'all follow what I was doing? I obviously I should do a tutorial on this, because the confusing part is when you do the stretching, knowing the source width and the source height can be confusing.
Yeah, Kyle is like the resizing stretching will be huge. And there's something else I was going to point out. Excuse me. Sometimes a lot of this is just tinkering and playing and seeing what it's doing. I mean, I've been using Light-O-Rama software probably since late 04, early 05. And, every new version, every new thing, I'm always finding new stuff and different ways to do things. So, it's that old cliche of, if you stop learning, you're going to fall behind type thing.
Yeah. And if it didn't work right, then just exit and don't save it and come in again. I do that a lot myself.
All right. Thank you, Brian, for sharing and for walking us through this. If there's any more questions, we have a couple more minutes here till the end. Otherwise, we need to get the stream ready for the next session at 3:00. So we appreciate you sharing. And again, thanks to Boscoyo and Build a Light Show for sponsoring this room.